So recently, and I don't know why, but on YouTube in particular, and a little bit on Instagram Reels now too, I've been seeing a lot of videos around talking about, you know, uh, Japan, because of course now Japan is open to tourism again, and, you know, Mr. Gene can, come in willy nilly and, do whatever. And so you have a lot of people going around kind of talking about what Japan is like and wow, crazy Japan, the typical influencer shtick and everything like that. But I do have something that has sort of piqued my interest in the last, I don't know, for a while now, actually. And that has a lot to, well, that's really what the title of this video would suggest is the issue of like, uh, you know, relationships, I guess, and dating and stuff in Japan, and the advent of cultural differences. And it might be ironic because I don't really have much experience about this at all, but I still have opinions, as do most people who are on the internet, right? Uh, but this comes from a different place, not really from uh, anecdotal experiences or anything like that, but just like from a simple kind of mindset, or I don't know, just from I don't even know what else to tell. Well, okay, let's just start, right? So, when it comes to this kind of stuff, a lot of people kind of find themselves worried about, like, oh, what cultural differences and all that stuff, you know, different ways of communicating, or different ways of doing things. And that's not just with dating, but just like coming to Japan or going to a country with like a different uh culture, at least perceived culture in the first place, right? And I feel like a lot of people tend to, I don't know, like overthink these sorts of things. Because you have a lot of people kind of asking basically a lot of the same questions, just reworded in slightly different ways, you know, and it's kind of, I guess it's just kind of funny in a way. It's kind of like a meme. But like the weird thing is when whenever I hear someone say like, you got to be careful with Japanese girls, because it's usually directed towards guys. All right, I mean, maybe it's because that's what like is catered to me through the recommendation algorithms and stuff like that. That because they know that I'm a guy that fits within a certain age demographic, that they're gonna put that stuff towards me. But I notice that it's like mostly foreign dudes who are asking like a lot of these same questions. Oh, Japanese girls, what are they like? The cultural and the differences, and you even have like YouTubers who make it their like whole shtick to go out and do like these Steven Crowder style like ambush uh, interviews with random people that they meet on the street. They do like four of them, and they just splice them together, based on every question. You'd be like, oh, well, that's what Japanese girls think. Thanks for watching. Tune in next week for, us doing the same thing, asking the same question, but to, in slightly different ways and with a different thumbnail and whatever. And it's always bothered me. I've never paid attention to those videos. I've never even watched them because I know they're all junk, and I highly suggest people don't watch them. The thing is, with the whole like cultural differences thing, in my honest opinion here, it doesn't matter. At least, well, I guess it shouldn't matter, right? Of course, okay, so there are going to be some differences, right? There are differences, when you change. If you live in America, there are differences between states, right? Let alone, a different country. But like, if you are just someone who is socially aware enough, and you, I don't know, if you're just kind of chill, I suppose, kind of chill, um I'd say that it wouldn't be any kind of issue, right? But if you're one of those people who are really, really set in your ways, and you have this kind of idea where like you still want to do it the way you are used to, right? You're kind of inflexible, I guess. And you come to a country and you find yourself saying a lot, well, where I come from, we do it this way, or where I come from, this isn't a big deal, then you're going to have problems, because that's not a mindset that is, bound for success. I'm just putting that out there. It's not a good mindset to have. Okay, nobody, I don't know, when you change companies, let's say, anywhere, right? The corporate culture is going to be different between two different companies. Between the people you work with and the culture of, like, I don't know, the higher ups or just the company in general, what they want is going to be different, right? So if you were working for, I don't know, let's say AT&T, right, and then you change over to Verizon, and like you find out after a few months that Verizon does something different, and you say, well, when we did it at AT&T, we did it this way. Most people are going to be like, okay, well, this isn't AT&T. Maybe they might change it, but if it's not, if it doesn't make any kind of difference, like substantially, right? It's not really a productive thing or conversation to really have in that context. I don't think, anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. I actually don't know very much about corporate culture, but maybe that's a bad analogy. But when you're, let's say, an American, Americans always do, well, not always, I've never done it, but Americans tend to do this. They'll leave America and they'll go to another country, and then someone will do something, and Americans will always be like, well, back where I come from, we do it this way, kind of implying that it is a better way or a more efficient way or a safer way or something like that, when it really doesn't make any huge difference, right? An example would be, well, I guess I'm going to pull from a personal anecdote here, but there was a time when I was sick, and I went to a doctor, and he prescribed me medicine. He prescribed me Chinese medicine, which was really interesting, and a painkiller, just a regular acetaminophen, right? And he told me to take up to 2 acetaminophen a day, I think it was, or yeah, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, and then the Chinese medicine 3 times a day. And someone, an American, told me that I should, by myself, independently double my dose of the acetaminophen. And I was kind of weirded out by that, because acetaminophen is tough on your liver, right? And I don't want to hurt anything, and I want to follow the doctor's orders. To which that person replied, well, in America, we do it that way, and, that's how doctors do it here. So it's like, okay, but like, I'm still taking advice from a doctor, right? I'm not in America, right? So, whatever. I don't know. It was just so, those types of things, right? Like, it's not really a big deal anyway, but it's just like, okay. And when you apply that mindset that, well, back where I come from, to like the world of, relationships or stuff like that, those types of things are built on compromise, right? And so if your argument, if your position is always going to be, well, we should do it my way because that's the way we do it in my home country, and I think it's better than what they do in your home country, even though I'm living in it. That's kind of a something I'd call a recipe for disaster. And I think that's where the whole cultural differences things come into play. But if you're just like, I don't know, it cultural differences aren't really something to worry about if you're just, I don't know, if you're just like, you understand where you are, and you try to understand like the way things are done, because there is rarely a case where there's well, rarely, I shouldn't say that, but when it comes to things like, socializing, or just like the order in which you do something or whatever, there isn't necessarily a right or wrong way. Just because America does it one way doesn't mean that that's just the be all end all of ways that it's done. And usually it's older generations of people who do that. Typically people around like the younger boomer, and like the Gen Xers in particular, the ones that aren't exactly the most well-traveled or very knowledgeable about these types of things. I mean, you can watch 16 Leo, and he puts that through the ringer, but like, I think that's really the biggest issue here. Just like the mindset of people. If you find yourself worried about like culture and customs or whatever, and like, being really kind of worried about cultural differences, then it's probably not a good place for you to stay in for a prolonged period of time, let alone try to pursue relationships with someone here. A lot of people, when it comes to just coming to Japan in general, they kind of put forward these, kind of, I don't know, I want to say unimportant, like cultural, like factoids, and treat them as if they're like hard and fast rules. Now, of course, in some cases it is true, but in other cases, it really isn't. A lot of the time it isn't, actually. I mean, Japanese people don't even follow those rules in general, right? I mean, I remember a great example of this, and I know I'm like going on a tangent here, but another example of this is when I was preparing to study abroad in Japan, and this was back in 2018, 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. And they were telling us, Japanese people, we live in New York, so like if nobody's coming, even though you have a red light, you can still cross the street, using the crosswalk, whatever, doesn't matter. But in Japan, they follow those signals very strictly. So, you can't do the New York walk anymore, No, that's far from the case. The place where I live in has so many jaywalkers and so many people who just disregard those signals to begin with, worse than New Yorkers in some cases. I mean, there's a Lawson in front of like the train station where I live, and recently, because people jaywalk, I mean, there are crosswalks on either side, like there's an intersection on either side of the Lawson, and people are like, well, I just want to cross from the Lawson itself, and they just decide to jaywalk across the street to the library or train station or whatever from there. And it got so bad that they actually put these big old like cement tiles or whatever on the ground in front of the Lawson, saying, don't cross from here, go to the crosswalks. But people still jaywalk. These are Japanese people. These aren't tourists or Mr. Gene or anything like that. It's just they jaywalk because people are people, and that is the main thing. Like, culture only goes so far until humanity kicks in, because as it turns out, we're all in the same species, right? And we just have certain universally unifying traits that transcend culture, that is so deeply embedded in us, right? And our right to jaywalk is one of those things, right? So yeah, they'll disregard that. They don't follow. And like I've seen people run red lights before and run stop signs when we're talking about driving and splitting lanes in. I mean, you name it, right? Splitting lanes with cars, mind you. So like, yeah, I mean, yeah. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just like, so when it comes to like relationships and stuff, just like if you find yourself worried about freaking, cultural differences, then that's a you problem. I'm inclined to say that's a you problem, right? But like, if you're just like normal and you're just like just doing the way you normally would, if it worked for you in your home country, it'll probably work for you here. If it didn't work for you in your home country, then it's not likely to work here or anywhere. All right. Sorry, I had a flashback there for a second. Anyway, I hope this was somewhat informative in some way. But I think that's all I really have to say about this. Yeah.